not exactly hidden. Should I be worried that the carnivores ran screaming from what I'm doing? Dale asks as he hefts up some of the hide from the paratok to skin it a little more thoroughly. Neither of them is so much as 10 years old. Butchering food is going to be gross no matter how many times you do so in public. Koga states as he hefts back on the paratok hide to help out Dale. Thank you, and I understand, but it's an important skill to learn. It's not really that they think it's gross, it's that they know it's something seen as gross, so they're having fun calling it that and running away. Koga remarks, and Dale lets out a little he of amusement. With the two of them working together, the paratok's hide is off in just another minute, and Koga digs out the shotgun slug that killed it. Nothing better than an eye shot. The brains of these things are great for all natural tanning. The slug bouncing around its skull does most of the work for you in pureeing them, Dale says happily as he gathers up the bladder and other such undesirable organs and tosses them into a small stained container for these things. Not to mention the skulls are thick enough to potentially resist a shotgun slug, Koga notes. The bone isn't, but these are axiom beasts, Dale says as he sticks his knife into the carving table and makes a quick check of what he thought was a discoloration. It was not. They're reinforced unnaturally. By the laws of averages, not being axiom reinforced is unnatural, not the other way around, Koga reminds him, and Dale shrugs as he picks up the knife again and starts to cut along the joints. Maybe, probably even. Dale concedes as he cuts off the hoofs from the paratok and sets them to the side. Is it odd that I've never eaten anything's feet until I came to this world? Koga asks, and Dale snorts. Hey, pickled pig's feet are a classic food, and these hippo boars have the exact right type of trotter for it. Dale returns. I had to eat 2 before any child would touch them, Koga remarks, and Dale chuckles. Then they pause and look away. It was just a whisper, but there was a connection to the woods, one that had just grown. Morg's got it, Dale notes before pointing his knife at the hide Koga's holding. Mind scraping the fat off that for me? Really? Koga asks. Morgarkun is a classic sorcerer born from a modern Serbo. If it's Jeth, then it's someone who understands him well. If it's Mux, then he's what the kid looks up to, Dale explains. You know those kids look up to you too, Koga remarks. But there's work to do, and there's someone there to... Dale begins, and Koga folds the hide, takes the knife from the man, and looks pointedly to where they can both feel the child feeling out into the forest full for the first time. Dale just holds his gaze before slumping a little and heading for the river to wash off the little splatters of blood on him, and he sighs to himself. He then heads to the children. It is Jeth Erla, staring up in wonder at a tree whose root he's standing on. The enormous tree is more a living tower whose gigantic roots make up an enormous part of this landing. Nearly a full fifth of the eastern side of the village had just this one tree dominating the skyline. Skyscrapers are but pale reflections of this living monument that stands taller than any other in the forest. An immense tree, perhaps the first tree of this dark forest, perhaps the first tree of every dark forest. Yet for all its immense age, it's just another tree. Its importance spent. If it were ever the first of anything, then it's certainly not a prize that gives it any distinction beyond immense size. It wasn't as tall as the mountain it stood against, but the fact such a comparison was easily made was an impressive feat all by itself. He passes by Morg Arkan and walks up to the children, Jeth reaching out for the first time to something greater, finally reaching that understanding and no longer stepping away from the forest, but to it instead, and Mux, not quite there but able to sense his friend is doing something. Is he okay? Dale, is he okay? Mux asks in uncertain tones. He's talking to the forest. He has so many questions that he can't hear anything else, Dale says, easily hearing the many whispers that Jeth is sending to the forest and the answers the child is getting in return. He kneels down next to the concerned child and watches as Jeth just stares up at the canopy. Once only shade, the shelter of birds and the rustling of leaves when the wind comes. Now it's talking to him, answering him. He can feel the warmth of sunlight on the leaves. He can taste the higher, colder winds and feel the feet of the birds bouncing up and down their lengths. However, he's only looking upwards. Dale grins and pats Mux on the back before walking up to Jeth Erla and pointing upwards before slowly shifting his direction downwards. Jeth follows his direction with his widening senses and sees not just the entire worlds in the canopy above, but the stately towers of the forest itself, the weaving of webs as arachnids lay their traps and smaller animals scurry along the noble trunks. The gaze is brought lower, to the floor itself, and upon root and moss and stone and earth are innumerable creatures and their tiny burrows, a city pulsing with life and meaning. Further down still goes Dale's direction. They're looking among the roots now. They're sensing the enormous gnarled arms of immense strength holding the very world in place, in defiance of erosion and tectonic shifting, life victorious over time. The wholeness of it, the enormity of it, the sheer immensity of a single forest has Jeth step backwards, unable to comprehend, fascinated but overwhelmed. He stumbles, but Dale catches him and lowers him gently to the ground to sit upon the earth and stone and realize that his awareness spreads to that too. "It's so big," Jeth says breathlessly, and Dale nods. "It is." Dale answers, "And it's my friend?" "If you will be its friend," Morg Arkin says from nearby. His voice is a whisper, but he sends it with the dark forest. They both hear it with crystal clarity. "That's not quite it. It will be your friend so long as you're willing to let it be your friend. The forest won't want anything from you that you won't want to do anyways. It's different from us, but that's a good thing. It's different and strange and strong," Dale says. "You make it stronger by being a part of it. The woods are mighty beyond most can imagine. But it has limits. Limits we sorcerers carry it past. The woods want you safe and strong and happy. For that strength and happiness can bring so much to the forest. You are a leaf to feed the greater whole, a great branch to carry leaves upwards to where they need to be, a trunk from where the branches are born, and you are the roots which holds up the wholeness of this great tree. You are a tree and you are the forest, and the forest is now part of you. Do you understand?" Morgarquan asks, and Jeth just looks back at him in confusion. Broken out of his reverie, Dale chuckles. "That may be a bit much. He's taken his first step on his own and I showed him the second. That's more than enough for now." Morg shrugs at that, but he's smiling brightly. "Either way, it's a good sign. I was worried this whole village wouldn't be able to make a sorcerer. But if he can hear the woods, then he's a sorcerer. Untrained, untested, and unready maybe, but also far happier and more balanced than any other at this stage. Good. There will always be some poor soul dragged to desperation and despair. But if we can get ahead of that, then I'd say job well done," Dale remarks as he stands up and ruffles Jeth's hair. "How do you feel, little buddy? Was it always there?" Jeth asks, and Dale nods. "Really? Not for all time. It wasn't here before Serbo was, but you won't find anything older or more reliable on the whole world," Dale explains, and Jeth nods. "Is this why all sorcerers are so strong? They have all that helping them?" Jeth asks, and Dale nods. "We're all part of something bigger. Every person and animal and plant is part of nature. Sorcerers are just really good at it, if that makes sense." Dale explains, and Morg Arkin laughs. "And you lost him. Look at that face. He's so confused." "Not helping Morg," Dale snaps. "Sorry. I'll go see if there's still some help needed with that pear attack you got earlier. See if I can't swipe a rib or two to nibble on. That beast is tonight's dinner for everyone. No loading up on your favorite bits before anyone else can get a chance." Dale chides him and Morg just waves at him before vanishing in a wood walk. Does this mean I have to get into a fight with a princess? Jeth suddenly asks. Do you want to? Dale asks in return. Well, no. Then I don't think you should bother with it. Although if you want to avoid getting into a fight with a princess, good manners is generally a good place to start, Dale advises. When can I do that? Mux Morrow asks, and Dale considers. You're close. You're so close, in fact, we thought you might start hearing the forest first, Dale says. Really? Then what do I do? Do I do it like this? Or maybe this? Or do I... Mux tries to force the connection while making two silly poses. One with a hand to his forehead and another one out as if he were trying to be a psychic, and the other with his hands up as if he were about to scream, "Boo!" at someone. Then he stops and goes silent. Whoa, Jeth says as he feels Mux's own connection start to grow. He doesn't understand what he's seeing, but it doesn't make it any less important. Hey, why don't you show him what I showed you? Dale asks Jeth, who nods before walking up to Mux, who's just looking straight ahead. Unfortunately, this doesn't turn out so well as Jeth then grabs Mux's head and tries to force him to look up instead of straight ahead. This results in a bit of a wrestling match that Dale's forced to break up by grabbing both children by the tail and pulling them back. Neither one is hurt, and for all that it wasn't a proper introduction, Mux is certainly over his initial awe. Jeth Erla, that is not what I asked you to do. Go see if Koga needs any help. I need to help Mux Morrow right now, all right? I'm sorry, Jeth says, and Dale sighs. Try to think things through in the future, little buddy, Dale says, and Jeth rushes off. All right, that didn't go the way I hoped, but do you have any questions, Mux? Is everything really connected? How do leaves turn light into food? Why don't leaves just grow from the ground and hay? That's just grass. Why are flowers so different from trees? Why do vines exist? Why aren't trees just bushes? How are roots so strong they can crack stone and hold things together? How? Dale holds up his hand to stop the deluge of questions before smiling. As for everything being connected, you just have to look and listen. So look down, little buddy. But Jeth started looking up. You're not Jeth Erla. You're Mux Morrow, Dale says. Now see how the roots hold everything together? The strength is that they're alive. They grow stronger and heal when they push too hard. Sure, a lot of wood is weaker than stone, but give the wood time and it will crack the stone with ease. And above it, so much is alive, Mux realizes. The dens and burrows of animals, the flowers and mosses and grasses of the woods. For all that so many people see wilderness as a scary and forbidding place, it's just bursting with life and opportunity. If you're willing to work with it, to live with it, and be part of it, then there's more food than you'd ever need, shelter by score and beauty without limit. That's even without hearing the forest, but if you can hear it, if you do know how to listen and understand, it becomes even better, even more beautiful, even more plentiful. Go up higher and there's all sorts of things even under the branches, Mux Morrow says in awe. All kinds of birds swoop and small animals jump from place to place in that part. That's where ivy grows and many insects and birds and beasts build nests and dens. But they do that in the branches too, Mux says, pointing further up. They do. The branches also sway more with the wind and hold the leaves themselves. Above them is where even more birds fly, and some more enterprising animals try to catch them. Why do they eat each other? There's so much from the forest. Why do animals need to eat each other? You're an animal too. Why do you need to eat them? What? The paratok we're having for dinner. There are more of them in the forest. We took it from the forest and we're going to eat it. Why do you need to eat meat? Because I can't eat plants. There are things that can't eat plants. There are more reasons, but there's so much going on right now that adding that to it too is a bit much, Dale says. So, there's a reason, and a good one. But you've got a lot of answers, and you need to sit down and absorb them. Like when you eat a really big meal, just relax and think you've got a lot to think about, little buddy. Okay, Mux Moro states and Dale nods. So far, so good.